Welcome to part 3 of my startup course. Today I want to talk to you about the business plan. Now let's look at the format that this is going to take. The first thing to say is that this is not a 60-page Word document. Okay, what you're going to put together is a plan, but you need to be very clear about the material and the plan and then the format in which you present it, because the two are very different. Make sure you thoroughly research your market and the competition and that you know this information in great detail. This is going to form your backup material that you're going to use either when dealing with Q&A from investors or when those investors or potential investors look to do due diligence on your market, and then you can bring this material into play. What you need to think about creating is a key slide deck, and we can talk about how that comes together both in this and in the next presentation. Now, if you can do the thing without a slide deck and present it using a whiteboard, then so much the better, because that'll have the benefit of spontaneity and be very creative. Another way to think about this is to put it forward in some sort of story, some sort of narrative. You know, how you got the idea, how you put the team together, how the business has evolved. There are some fundamentals we should look at that are really core to the plan and the points you need to communicate. First of all is all about the needs and the benefits for your customers. Okay, don't whine on for an awful long time about the solution and how brilliant the company is. You know, explain the pain, explain the problem, and explain the needs and benefits. I've put unit prices down here because the point I want to make here is that you really need to get to the bottom of the numbers and have it worked out in very great detail bottom up. And you do need to have this very minute grasp of how your numbers are going to be built up. Allied to this is understanding how the business model is going to work, and I've talked about this in my previous videos and I will talk about it again in future videos. But you need to have a clear idea of what you're going to sell, how you're going to sell it, and how this is going to form a sustainable business. Now, don't get mixed up between forecasting and budgeting. Forecasting is the future running off of numbers on a spreadsheet, effectively. Budgeting is how are you going to manage the money you've got on a month-by-month basis to make sure that money does what it needs to do to make your business work. And budgeting and cost control are a critical element to the whole business plan, and it's often forgotten while people are working out what their wonderful sales projections are going to be. So this really comes down to understanding the microeconomics of how your business works. It's not about the macroeconomics of the market, and don't make that mistake. And the last thing is you need to be able to explain the performance of your business in some key metrics, and those metrics have to be relevant to your business and must tie into the sorts of things you're doing. Okay, so you need to think very hard about those, and you probably need about half a dozen, but you need to be able to demonstrate progress and milestones in those terms because they're very easily communicated. So let's look at some of the key elements that need to sit behind your business plan. The first of these is being able to demonstrate customer traction, that you can actually sell some of your products and services to a customer base. And we've talked about traction before, but this must come through in what you're saying. The next thing, which is incredibly important today, particularly in the technology sector, is demonstrating social proof. You've got to have some sort of momentum out there, some sort of buzz, some sort of conversations going on about your product or solution and your presence, and that has to really have some substance to it and some momentum to it, and that'll give your investors a lot of confidence that what you're actually trying to do is believable and therefore worth considering as an investment. Now, you need to hone how you deliver your pitch, and we'll talk about the slide deck, but you are making a pitch, you are trying to sell something. So when you do that, make sure you do it with confidence. Okay, and when you are delivering this, make sure it's been rehearsed so you know what you're going to say. And the last thing is, don't forget you've got a team, and make sure that the elements of your team, the different people in your team, get a chance to showcase themselves. Because there's nothing worse than 5 guys turning up to a meeting and only 1 guy doing all the talking. So finally, let's talk about some of the aspects of delivery. The first thing is that the normal person's attention span is about 10 minutes. So you've really got to get them hooked, and you've got to realise that after 10 minutes their attention is going to drop off and you've got to come back and recapture it. Guy Kawasaki, who I've got a lot of respect for, has got a 10-20-30 rule, and it's worth thinking about this. 10 slides, 20 minutes, 30-point font. And that's what your pitch deck should resemble. Now, I've put the word ignorance here. Ignorance isn't bliss. My point here is that if you get asked a question and you don't know the answer, then admit your ignorance and say, look, I don't know the answer to that, but I'll get back to you, and then make sure you follow up. Robert Cialdini's book, Influence, teaches you how to sell to your customers and indeed to your potential investors using his 7 levers of influence, one of which, for instance, is scarcity. This is all explained in his book, which I'll do a review of as part of this video course, but I strongly encourage you to go out and read it and learn to be a more subtle salesman as part of improving your delivery techniques. I've put down, concrete. Be specific and use concrete phrases. Don't be woolly and waffly. Be very specific. Be quantitative where you can, and make sure that your presentation isn't filled with hyperbole and lots of excited, woolly, meaningless sentences. Be very specific about the message you're trying to convey. And finally, remember and keep the psychology of this in your mind. And I'll come on to this in another video later in the course, but remember the psychology of the pitch, and that is that you are the prize and that the money is a commodity. The last thing to say is that something that's really important is that it's not the slide deck that the investors are going to be interested in, it's the substance of your presentation and what's behind it. So as ever, this slide deck, which has got the ancillary notes to it, is downloadable. In the next video, in part 4, I'm going to talk about more specifically the core elements of the business plan. Thank you very much for spending your time with me in this video, and I'll see you in part 4.